Hi, this is Travis with another workout video for you guys today. I'm a doctor of physical therapy for those of you that don't know me. And in the earlier days of this channel, pretty much the reason why I started the channel was because I want to show you some ways to work out at home. You know, when everyone was pretty much locked in their houses, they couldn't really go to a commercial gym. Maybe they didn't have access to a garage gym. But I'm back with bands again today, and that's because I want to show you some ways to make it a little stronger for those of you that maybe feel like they're a little too easy and you've hit the ceiling. Because sometimes I'm talking to a patient, maybe they're pretty fit at baseline, and I'll say, hey, well, you know, right now maybe you can't get into a gym or you can't use free weights, but you can still use these bands for a few things. And they'll say, yeah, but it's a little bit too easy for me. And so I'll say, well, here's a cool trick you can use to make it harder. And I'm like, oh, wow, that's actually pretty cool. So I figured I'd bring that to you guys today. And then for those of you that are already familiar with this idea or familiar with the bands, I'm going to show you a couple of cool supersets I've been using in more traditional workouts. So again, I'm not a one size fits all, and I'm not necessarily a one trick pony kind of guy. So I'm not going to say bands are always the best or free weights are always the best per se. Sometimes it's nice to kind of blend and get a mixture of both. And depending on what you're trying to get after, there can be a time and a place for both. So sometimes what I'll recommend is use bands for a portion of the workout, but maybe use free weights for another portion of the workout, and you can kind of blend it a little bit like that. So if you're interested in how to doing that stuff, go ahead and stay tuned and we'll get started. Okay, so here's the spoiler alert. I'm just going to come right out and tell you what the secret is today, which really isn't the secret. It's pretty obvious, but all you have to do is just layer on a couple of bands together, okay? So when you get these Therabands, and again, Theraband was just the first player in the game. You know, saying Theraband is kind of like saying Kleenex when you're talking about tissue. A lot of manufacturers out there. I'm not necessarily endorsing Theraband. You know, it's a good band. Obviously, there's a ton of manufacturers, and I certainly haven't kept up with all of them. I have tried some other manufacturers that are not as good as Theraband, though, but it doesn't necessarily have to be these. And again, these are 2 gold. It doesn't have to be gold. I just bought a roll of this, so I was able to cut it. Okay, so if you get like a roll, I think it was about 18 feet, you know, you can cut a few different pieces, and all of a sudden you've got a few bands you can layer together, okay? So if I were to do a traditional exercise like a tricep extension, so, you know, again, or a rope press down, as some people call it, you know, you come in here and you basically just extend your elbows, and that's a very traditional tricep exercise. Your triceps are those muscles in the back of the arm above the elbow, and they pretty much do an elbow extension. They do a little bit of a shoulder extension, particularly that long head of the tricep. But the point is, it's about 2/3 of the upper arm. So anybody looking to build arm size, you're definitely going to want to hit some triceps. You know, rope press downs, that's a very tried and true exercise, been around a long time. So this would be the band version of that. And so you can see here, if I were to grab this band and I were to try and do sort of the equivalent of a rope press down, you know, with just one band, that's pretty easy. That's not very difficult for me. Not that I'm trying to toot my own horn, but, you know, just it isn't that tough. I'm pretty much getting the blood flowing here. You know, this could be a nice warm-up, but it's really not doing a lot more for me as far as giving my triceps a lot of overload. But then when I just come in here with that second band, all of a sudden I can make it pretty tough, okay? So I would just come in here now, pull that down, and again, that would look very much like a rope press down. Now, a cool trick I like to do, this is just a bonus, you certainly don't have to do this. There happens to be a Smith machine on the other side of this thing, so I don't really use this pad for squats a lot. I'm not really a big fan of it for that, but I actually like to rest my head against it, okay? And then I'll do tricep extensions like this. And it's just kind of a cool way to get some isometric neck flexors as I'm also getting my triceps, okay? And so once again, you can see I'm not having an extremely difficult time here. You know, it's working a little bit for me, but it's not necessarily that tough still. But again, all I have to do is just add one more band in the mixture. So again, with these rolls, you can cut them so you're pretty long. So all of a sudden I've got 3 in here now, okay? Just want to make sure I've got them shored up, okay? Now the grip does start to get a little bit bulkier, but that's not necessarily a deal breaker. What you can also do with these bands always is just wrap your hands. So if you feel like the grip's getting a little bit awkward, you know, wrap your hands and then you don't have to hold it as strongly. And from there I would come in, and there's my press down. Okay, and now with 3 bands, it's getting pretty tough, okay? That's getting to a point where I'm definitely feeling like I'm getting a work set now. My triceps are definitely getting more exercise. So again, you know, there's no reason why, again, if you're even stronger than that, you know, 4, 5, 6, you could certainly layer onto the cake. Now at a certain point, you would say, well, why do I need to do that when I could just go into a gym? I don't have to buy these expensive bands. And I would say, okay, that's a pretty good point. But that being said, sometimes we just like to mix it up, right? Sometimes it's nice to just do something a little bit different. I wouldn't say this is an essential way to do it. It's just a pretty cool way to do it. And it does give you, again, a little bit of a unique feel. You know, when I'm here in this rope position, you know, I really feel a very standard line of pull. It feels very smooth because it's pretty much constant tension. I don't really feel like I'm doing a lot other than just hitting the triceps, okay? Once I come in here, though, with these bands, I feel like there's a little bit more for me to wrestle with, a little bit more instability, even when I'm just with one band. That just feels a little bit different. So again, it's probably going to recruit the muscle overall similarly, but a little bit different. And again, the difference being mainly that I'm getting more tension on this as I straighten my elbow than I am at the top. So at the top, I don't really have a lot of tension versus down here, I have quite a bit more tension than I do. And again, that's certainly the case when I'm adding more bands in the mixture versus here, I get that tension right away, but then that tension's constant. So, as I'm stronger down here, I'm not necessarily getting my money's worth as much as I would be, with a band. So once again, it's just a different way to mix it up. I wouldn't necessarily say one's better than the other. If you only had one band though, then obviously this is pretty nice because you just throw some plates on there. If it's selectorized, you pull a pin, you can adjust the weight very simply. Here again though, if I had extra band, that's an easy way to do that too. So again, I'll let you guys pick your poisons. I just want to make sure you guys have seen that today. So now let's talk about a couple of supersets. All right, so just to give you guys a few ideas how to implement these bands more in a traditional training program. So a popular concept in bodybuilding is what they call like a drop set or a strip set, okay? So the way that might look is, let's just say if I was gonna do something like a side lateral, where I'm lifting dumbbells out to my sides, you might do what they call running the rack, where maybe you start out with a certain weight, let's just say 40 pounds, you do as many as you can with 40, then all of a sudden you rack the weight, I go to 30, do as many as I can at 30, rack the weight, go to 20, right? And you pretty much run the rack that way. Or again, you could do something like a bench press where maybe I'm going to start out, with a certain amount of weight, let's just say, to make the math easy, 300 pounds. And then all of a sudden, I do what I can. And somebody strips off a plate, let's just say I'm at 250 now. I finish out a few extra reps, strip that down to 200 and finish out a few extra reps. That would be an example of a strip set. And again, that's not necessarily going to work because weight doesn't necessarily go that way when you're using 45-pound plates. But you guys get the idea, okay? So you can implement a similar concept to that with these bands. So let's just say I would take an exercise like a chest press, okay, which would sort of mimic an exercise like a bench press. And so I'm at 3 bands right now, okay? And again, I can just put this thing in the back of me, right behind me. I'd like to put it up a little bit higher ideally, kind of in this back part. Now, one of the things that I don't like to do as much with the bands on these chest presses is put it on the outside of the arm, just because this tension ends up getting a little bit annoying. Not that it's, terribly painful, but it just gets a little uncomfortable sometimes. And so what I'll do is I'll usually put this thing between my arms and my body. So you're almost getting a little more of a close grip or like a tricep press, okay? Now this doesn't necessarily have to be behind your back though. You certainly could anchor it to something. And so if I were to take this off, just to show you guys how this works, I could put this back here. So now I've got the band anchored, and then I would grab the band this way, and off I would go, ready to, execute a chest press, okay? And obviously it's as nice if I had a Smith machine because I can change that angle very easily. And just to simplify this, let's just say I would come in here, and again, you don't necessarily have to wrap your hands on this, but I will just to kind of get some of this slack out of the way so you can see what I'm doing. And I would just come in here and I would do a chest press, okay? And so let's just say I'm doing this, and again, this feels decently difficult, not super tough, but let's just say it was hard enough that I could really work myself here. And I get to a point where I'm barely getting another one. All of a sudden, all I have to do, take a band out of the mixture. So very quickly, I can pretty much drop that band and I can extend the set, okay? So again, this is why they call this a set extending technique. Let's just say I'm running out of gas here. When I drop that one more time, then I just grab the last band and off I go with a single, okay? And I could just finish that out however many I can muster, and then I'm done, okay? And that's just a pretty cool way to extend that set. So again, that was 3, 2, 1. Again, in my case, since that wasn't necessarily super tough for me, I probably could have added 1 ply, and so maybe I could have gone, 4, 3, 2, because by the time you're 1, it's pretty light here. So, but you get the idea. And, again, you could use something like a back support. You don't necessarily have to use this bar, but again, that's just a different way to show you guys how to mix this stuff up. So no reason why I couldn't apply that concept in the other direction. So just to briefly show you guys, I could take these bands here, and again, I would try to shore them up. Sometimes the only annoying thing is they do get a little bit wonky here, so what you have to do is just kind of reshore them up a little bit. Again, no reason why I couldn't then come the other way and do a row, for instance, okay? And so I would do that for whatever I could muster. Just drop that top one, then I've got 2, and again, I would just finish out that set, okay? And then again, same thing, then drop the last one, okay? And then finish out the single, okay? So that's just, again, another way you can mix that up into a row type of an exercise. All right, so that was a way to extend a set. Now I'm going to show you guys to kind of mix multiple exercises, do kind of what they call like a superset, compound set. Some people call it a giant set. I'm basically going to show you a couple different exercises that I like to do with a band, and I'm going to sort of marry them all together. So 3 exercises I really like to do with bands specifically are side laterals. I think it's a great exercise with the band because you really feel that contraction, in that medial deltoid, because you get that tension at the top. I really like doing upright rows with the band, and then sometimes I like to do more of a vertical pull apart. Okay, and those are all nice exercises because they're basically all work the shoulder, and so they lend themselves pretty nicely to like a compound or a giant set. Okay, and so sometimes what I'll do is I'll take 2 bands, and depending on, if you want this to go smoothly and sort of quickly, what you can do is start out with your feet. I'll kind of move back so you guys can see what's happening here. I'm standing on this band. Now the side lateral ends up being a pretty tough exercise for some people. So what I'll do is I'll take this band and then I'll come in here and I'll do my side laterals, say for instance, okay? And again, I'm going to be able to do a little more in the rep count on this one here. So I could have picked this exercise to do a little bit later, but again, I could just shore this up a little more too, right? So I don't necessarily always have to go to 2 bands. Sometimes I could just tighten it. And already now I feel like it's getting pretty tough, okay? And right here, that's probably a little more than, that's probably about 30, 35 pounds, equivalency with dumbbells, maybe even a little bit more, okay? So I finished that exercise. Let's just say I was shooting for about maybe 10, 12, somewhere in there. Then all of a sudden I come down, grab the other band, because I've got it ready. I like to have this cross method here because I think it just puts a little more tension on the deltoid. So again, I've got this thing crossed now, and all of a sudden I can come into an upright row. Okay. I like to hinge at my hips just a little bit on this one. So you won't see everybody doing that. Some people are more purists. They're standing very upright and they come up. And again, I don't like to come up super high on this one. I think it can be a little tough on the shoulders. But when you're staying kind of low like this, I think it does a pretty nice job. And again, I'm still trying to really focus on those deltoids as I'm pulling up, okay? So that's 2 bands now because I'm stronger in that movement. Then all of a sudden I just step away, take this band, and I go into a vertical pull apart. And again, this one's not going to be that tough. So if I got here and I realize, that's not that hard, pretty quickly marry them together, come down, and again, I can decide. So if my hands are pretty far apart at the beginning, that might make it, a little bit too easy. Come in a little tighter, and all of a sudden, there I go. Okay, and that was just to kind of show you guys. That wasn't necessarily the resistance that I would have used per se. I think the side laterals there ended up being a little easy because I did them first. So, you can mix it up. You could say, maybe I'll try that upright row first, pre-exhaust the side, the medial deltoids a little bit, then go to the side lateral, then quickly switch to vertical. But it just pretty much shows you guys how you can mix and match. And so that could be a cool little, again, superset, and technically that'd be more of a compound or a giant set. Just pepper in a workout, I could throw that anywhere in a workout. So you could say maybe earlier in the workout, I was doing something more in the vertical pressing department. Maybe I was doing a landmine press, kind of got those shoulders their money's worth. Then all of a sudden I throw in a giant set like that. That'd be a pretty nice way to polish off, some shoulder emphasis, or what they might call a shoulder day. Okay, one last thing I'm going to show you guys today. This is just sort of a bonus exercise. I didn't necessarily have to even put this in here, but I figured why not? I already included, a shoulder video as far as how to deal with shoulder pain. I've talked about how to work your external rotators. But a pretty cool way to do it, and let me show you what I just did there. I put my hands here, and all I do is I wrap them, okay? So my hands are basically now being held together by the band, and then I just come down and I grab it, okay? So my hands, again, they're just wrapped like this, and I've grabbed the band here. And then what I can do from there is just, so if I were to just in isolation turn my forearm out, that's a movement they call supination, okay? But if you notice, my shoulder actually moves as well. So it's actually more external rotation. I'm actually turning my shoulder out because my shoulder and my elbow are moving together like a unit. So technically my hand is supinating, but it's because I'm externally rotating my shoulder, okay? For those of you who are more interested in the technical explanation here, I grab that band and I just try to turn this thing out, okay? That's just a pretty cool way with even a one band to just really get some external rotation down low. I can come up a little higher, and I'm just trying to rip that band in half, okay? So I can just call these, some external rotation, turnouts here, okay? And so it's almost like I'm, holding a steering wheel, and I'm just trying to turn that apart because the band, again, is trying to keep me internally rotated. And so I'm just basically just trying to forcefully turn that out, okay? So again, I could come in here at the beginning, You know, I could come in here kind of mid-range. You know, mid-range technically be here. I don't necessarily know what you need to do this overhead, and you're not going to get as far probably, but in theory you could. And that's just a really cool way to work external rotation. You know, traditional way is kind of coming in more here. And I've certainly spoken to that in some other videos, so you guys can always check that stuff out. But this is just kind of a cool, unique exercise. I realized I hadn't really talked about it in my shoulder video, so it's here. I'm not sure if anybody's going to find it necessarily who's looking to shoulder pain, because this isn't a shoulder pain video. But again, it's there for you. So I encourage you guys to check out some other content, though. If you do have shoulder pain, definitely know what you guys think. I did upload that video a couple videos back. So more good stuff to come. I'm going to try to cover some other different types of equipment I've added in my garage gym. I definitely want to cover blood flow restriction training at some point in the near future, because that is a pretty popular topic. I haven't talked about it yet, and it is another cool way to incorporate and get a little bit more out of some of your strength training. Not necessarily strength per se, but more in the hypertrophy domain. So I'll be talking about that. Good stuff to come. As always, I appreciate you guys watching this stuff. Let me know if there's anything else you want to see. I always will entertain special requests. And as always, I hope you guys have some fun.